Hi everybody, Mitch I'm here. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm gonna talk about the fake North Korean IT worker um, cyber attack is really what it is. I started to say scam. The basic concept is that North Koreans respond to a open position in the interview, and they get the job. They're remote. You never see them. Um, Turns out that, and we've had people who have wound up going to jail for this in the United States. You ship this laptop for them to some address. The person at that address is running a laptop farm with dozens and dozens of computers, on racks, and then the North Koreans remote into those laptops, and they may do that with if they're allowed to install software, they'll do it with software. If they're not allowed to do software, they'll do it as a keyboard, video, and mouse extender technology called the KVM. And at that point, they can install backdoors in software. If they're developing software, they can steal information. They can figure out ways to persist inside the corporate infrastructure, and it's a big problem. The FBI is warning about it. We've had folks that we know that have come to us who've told us that they've run into this problem. Um, and these guys are getting better and better, and they're using AI to figure out how to launch their attacks. But they're using stolen identities. Um, because they're using stolen identities, they pass the ID test. Um, they use fake resumes, fake LinkedIn profiles, um, and now they've started to use deep fake personas where you hold up they hold up, not you, they hold up a driver's license, and the AI technology they're using will superimpose their picture on the driver's license. um, when you ask them to show up hold up a driver's license. Um, a lot of these you know are folks that people hire on things like places like freelance.com. Many of them are full-time employees, and they interview well, but you've never met them, and that's part of the problem. And that's one of the fixes is you got to meet these people because they really are in North Korea. You have a picture, you know what they look like, and if that was the person that you thought you were interviewing, and somebody else shows up at the interview, well, that's kind of a red flag, right? Um, you know, not only are they stealing data and planting backdoors inside your network, but in a lot of cases they're selling access to other crooks. Um, the reason why small and medium-sized businesses are targeted for this is that they don't have the sophisticated monitoring, logging, alerting that bigger businesses have, which is fixable. It's fixable potentially at a reasonable price, but it's definitely not free. But then again, neither is giving all your stuff to the North Koreans. That's not free either. Um, so you gotta make questions. You gotta answer questions like, do I go to law enforcement? Am I required to disclose this? Are there more than one of these guys inside my organization? This is a generalized version of the insider threat problem, obviously. And what about vendors? Do I have vendors who might be compromised, and they haven't told me that they're compromised, and they don't have any protection whatsoever against this kind of attack? So a lot of problems and no easy answers. Um, you know, so my goal out of this video is not to make you an expert, but just to make you aware that this is a real problem and it's happening, and people are falling for it, and people are seriously compromising their companies. This is one of those cases where you really do need some expertise on your team, and if this is an area where you're ready to move forward and become more resilient to these kind of attacks, and protect yourself against them at the same time, um, you know, please give us a call. We'd be happy to work with you and and harden your world. It's a challenge, and it affects everybody in the food chain because what's going to happen is, let's assume you hire this person and, you think everything's good, but they work with another IT person. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm seeing something here that doesn't make any sense. Are they going to say anything to anybody? They should, obviously, but will they? And I think, if you train people about, insider threat in general and the North Korean IT worker specifically, then I think people are more likely to report it. And it used to be that these guys were only going after the tech industry. Turns out that's not the case anymore. They're going after all different kinds of industries. So if you thought that, well, we're not a tech company, so we're safe, that might have been true a year or two ago. But there's just so much money to be made. The North Koreans are saying it's like stealing candy from a baby, which is probably not politically correct, but too late. Um, and they're just going to go off and steal that candy for as long as they can get away with it. So with that, if we can help, please contact us. Otherwise, thanks for listening. We appreciate your time as always.